Welcome to Bounce Back Stronger, the podcast that explores ways to find peace and purpose no matter what happens. Today's guest is author Betsy Thibaut Stephenson. A little about Betsy. Betsy is the author of Blackbird, a powerful memoir written in real time about loss. The book follows Betsy as she navigates the devastating losses of her son to suicide, her mother-in-law to dementia, and her beloved dog to cancer, all within 6 weeks. Rather than turning away from grief, Betsy chose to live alongside it, writing with raw honesty about what it means to survive, to speak openly about suicide, and to rebuild a life shaped by both love and loss. If you or someone you love is walking with grief, this conversation will bring insight, compassion, and perhaps even a little light. Betsy, I just finished reading your book, and I admire you so much for your fearlessness in telling your story. Thank you so much for coming on to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I look forward to our conversation.
Me too. So this is the book. You can see I have sticky notes already. You dive right in. So you begin in the aftermath of what happened to you, and you are just writing the story in real time. Why did you decide to do that? Because that's incredibly hard.
So I did not set out to write a book. A lot of people turn to writing, even in those first horrible early days, as a way to try and have something to grab onto when everything's falling apart. The page is safe.
Mm.
You can say whatever you want. It doesn't matter if it's as absurd as the things that are going on around you. It doesn't matter if it's embarrassing. It doesn't matter if it sounds foolish to you. Or if what I found a lot in early grief in particular is there were a lot of contradictory feelings. How can I feel this way, but also feel that way? And so writing, in my case, a lot of it was on my phone. Something would pop into my head. And I wonder if he was thinking that. I
Mm.
wonder if I ever told him that. Wait a minute. You're telling me that this and this has happened. Like I just put it in there. There was no goal. But each day, as we are coming to terms and trying to understand, your life blows up when your kid dies. It blows up and the pieces start landing and you start trying to put them back together. And these things that I was recording and writing down became a way for me to untangle my emotions and my confusion. It didn't cure the grief, which cure is something that I felt in the early days. Make this go away. It does not go away, but it doesn't remove the loss or the pain, but it helped me untangle some of these complex things and give it a place to go. And so that became a habit of mine. And again, nothing that unusual about that. People turn to journaling, people turn to correspondence to help them with difficult things and complicated things. And after about 6 months, I realized that I had essentially a body of work because some of these things I would go deep into and I'd write little essays to myself. And sometimes I would take a thought and I would post it on social media just to my friends. My platform is just friends and family. And that made me feel good and seen and a lot of validation. Then, about 6 months into it, I decided to put it into a book. And I didn't realize until after I had published. So the book is in the world, it is out there. I'm talking about it. And I heard the expression that memoir writers use, which is they say, write from the scar, not from the wound. The idea being that if you're going to tell your story and share it with the world, that you should put some wisdom there. How did you get through this experience? What did you learn? What is life like 5 years after the fact, once you've healed and you've bounced back, right? Of course, that's perspective that is absolutely essential because when you're going through it, I know I still need to see, okay, this is what life can look like. 10, 15, 20 years down the line. People make it. They make it. You need that. And there's a lot to learn from others' growth and success. That's why you and I are talking right now. But the wound, particularly I think for grief, is universal and yet so underaddressed.
Mm.
And I found that saying the things, and in this case in written word, but now in conversations, that no one wanted to say, that was a different approach. And I didn't set out to be different, but people say to me, you wrote the things that I could not find the words for. And that is the highest compliment that I could receive as a writer and as a fellow griever. And so I feel like, in that sense, the book, which started off as a means to heal me, hopefully has a greater chance of healing others as well, because they can see themselves on the pages and they can say, oh, me too. I didn't want to admit that, or I certainly couldn't say it out loud, but I felt that, or I experienced that as well.
Yeah, I think it's really helpful because you hit a lot of different layers. We can take a very two-dimensional view of grief and what we're going through. And your questions that you had, going through the early days, I could really relate to just the depth of those musings. I agree. I think it's really helpful, especially if you're going through it at the moment. In the beginning, it certainly feels like you're in the middle of it, but towards the end, you are doing the typical, here's a little bit of what's working for me, which I think is really helpful as well.
And I felt that I opened Blackbird with the facts.
Which I loved.
My thinking was, let's just get this out of the way. I'm sitting on my sofa in my living room on a Sunday night, the police knock on the door and they tell me my son has killed himself. Let's just get that out of the way. It doesn't change. Whatever my journey is, whatever my hurt, whatever my feeling is. And I just put out there all those questions that I know people would have, that our friends and family have. Where? When? How? Who? What was it like when you
Uh,
had this conversation, and how did you do it? And these are gruesome personal things, but they're questions that we all have, and it's human nature, and I'm okay with that. I understand why a lot of folks are intensely private about those moments. So really, this is just a matter of personal preference. It's my personality. I've always been this way. So I didn't become different about my approach to open conversations after I lost my son. To me, it enhanced it. And what I realize is people have questions whether I want to answer them or not. So I might as well be the one to answer them. And starting my story with those cut and dry details, which of course are emotionally intense, allowed me then to dive into what we experienced as a family and the ways that we started to reshape our lives after they'd been blown apart. And we kept having loss after loss. And it was like, wow, everything dies. Everything around you dies. And that will mess with your brain. That will mess with your heart. That will make you want to stop and shut down. And there were parts of me that completely did stop and shut down. And I barely left the house for a year. But I knew that even if I were protecting myself and closing off, I could still have growth and healing in that process. And so that's what Blackbird is about.
I really appreciated too you talking a little bit about the isolation that you can feel because you just don't want to talk about it. And every time you run into somebody the first time, you're talking about it. There was a lot that you did to help other people also be a little bit more understanding to those who have lost folks. Like I love that everybody wants to go on a walk. I love that part. Tell me
Yeah.
about that a little bit. I just thought that was great.
Yeah, I'm a walker anyway. And I think there's a lot of open acknowledgement that walking with a friend or a partner can be a great way to have hard conversations because you're not facing each other. You're standing next to each other and you've got distractions of the weather or the gardens or the traffic or whatever it is. And it became a healing mechanism for me that felt very natural. And for a long time, I didn't have any stamina. And that was hard because I had been walking miles a day every day before I lost my son. And there's a lot of physical
Hmm.
repercussions to deep grief. And one of them is you just lose all your energy. And so, literally, my next door neighbor, women on both sides, they're like, let's go for a walk around the block. And that's it. That's all we would do. We would just walk around the block. It was 9 minutes and it was slow and there was no purpose to it. It was just their physical presence being outside. And then very slowly over time, going a little farther, going a little more complicated areas. Oh, I'm going to cross the street. Crossing the street became a terrifying thing, right? When everything around you is dying, you're like, well, that means I'm going to die too. And what's scarier than a car? And your brain's not working. So I didn't trust myself. Red, green, what am I supposed to do? Do I go here? Do they go? Who has the right of way? And this is my own neighborhood, right? I didn't trust myself. I didn't trust myself to drive. I didn't trust myself to walk. I didn't trust myself to pick the right utensil to feed myself. Like the confidence in just being a human is obliterated. For me, it was anyway. And my approach was to acknowledge that. And that's what's in the book. Of course, I was like, what's wrong with me? But just acknowledging it, saying, wow, this is crazy stuff. This is crazy that I can't cross a street in my neighborhood. And okay, so what are we going to do about it? We're going to bring a friend so she makes sure you don't get hit by a car. That's what
We're
we're
going
going
to
to do.
learn it.
Learn
And I
it,
think
relearn it.
really, I think a lot of things you take for granted until this kind of hits you.
I had a reunion with some college friends, and there was a woman in our friend group who was not in the reunion, but she had lost a child years before I did. And at the reunion, one of the women said, every time I get together with her for lunch, once a year or whatever, she just still cries about this child. And this friend was being very generous. She was not being judgmental. She was actually asking me, like, is it really? It's been 10 years, whatever. And I said, yes, it is. I'm only 3 years into it and I can see that. But also, when she sees you, she thinks of her life before. She sees college friends and happiness and the whole world spread out in front of her. And now she knows this hard reality that so many people live with, this deep loss. And so I wouldn't necessarily ascribe her tears to her inability to handle this loss or to you making her upset. It's just this clash of these worlds. And honestly, everyone around us is dealing with their version of that.
Yeah, I think when your reality gets shifted, and she was
Yeah,
having a reality shift right in that
right.
moment. Yeah, really, really wise and really true. And we're going to grieve the way we grieve. We're going to cry when we want to cry. It's
Absolutely.
just going to
Yeah.
happen. And I'd be interested to hear if you agree with this. It may change your willingness to be around people that don't understand that.
I will tell you a couple of things. One, the single best advice I got was from a friend who had also lost a child. I was at the funeral and I said, what do I do? And he said, cry. And I'm a crier anyway, but give yourself permission. And if you're supporting someone who's grieving, give them permission to cry. There is nothing wrong with crying. There's nothing wrong with crying in front of people. Don't deny yourself that. The last week I've been crying a lot, but I cry for 2 minutes and then I'm all right. Normalize that. On the other hand, no one's good at this. I don't know what to say to someone when they've lost a child. I go to events and I'm talking to people and they will tell me their grief story of someone that they love dearly. And I don't know what to say. And I wrote a whole book about it. People always say, what should you say? And I'm like, acknowledge, support. And really, so much of what I experienced was I wasn't listening to the words as much as the feeling and the sentiment that people were giving me. So they would offer their perspective or their experience or what they're doing to remember Charlie, or maybe it's prayers or rituals or poetry. And I felt the intention behind all of that. It's all beautiful because it was a way for them to not just support me, but to just try and take a little bit of a piece of our burden and make it a little thinner by providing some love and acknowledgement and validation in there.
So maybe let's talk a little bit where Blackbird came from. It's so funny when I was starting to read this book, it was showing up everywhere in songs and in albums. And I was like, oh my goodness, I'm so meant to read this book. And because I'm a big believer in signs and things like that, largely because of the
Yes.
people I've lost. So just maybe tell a
Yes.
little bit about the story. It's lovely.
Sure, yes. And I'm a big believer in signs. And to me, it's a choice and it's a simple choice. I choose to believe that Charlie and those that I've lost, my father and my father-in-law and my mother-in-law and my dog, I choose to believe they're all around me because it makes me feel better. And while I'm here on this earth and I am learning to live without them, then
Mm.
I need to do the easy. What is going to make me feel better? It's going to make me feel better that the bird or the butterfly or the rainbow or the song is them coming to me. And Blackbird is interesting because birds are really big symbols for grievers and for those that have passed. And of course, blackbird itself is a ubiquitous bird. There's no one blackbird, it's a bunch of birds. So I realized pretty early on, it's like, okay, I have this association between Charlie and Blackbird, but that can't be my sign because if that's the case, then I've got 100 blackbirds on my lawn every morning, and that's just a lot. So the affiliation and the name of the book comes from the Beatles song by Paul McCartney. My father loved to play guitar, grew up with a lot of music in the house, and one of his many songs that he played was Blackbird. When I was a little kid, I remember sitting around and listening to him play, and I always love it. It's beautiful on the guitar. And so I have very strong association between my father and that song. And he died in 2009, and my son was young, and I gave my son my father's guitar. And Charlie grew up and became interested in music and started taking lessons. And I said, if you really want to make me the happiest mom ever, you'll learn to play Blackbird. And he's okay, whatever. And sure enough, because he was like 14, and he comes home one day and he says, Mom, go out on the patio. I've got something for you. And he pulls out his guitar and he plays Blackbird. And I have it on video, and
That's
he's
awesome.
so proud, and it was beautiful. His finger work was incredible. And I cried. And that became one of his go to songs around the house. His sister sings, so she would sing the words. And it just was an important one, but one of many. If you have musicians around you, they're always picking up their instruments or singing or humming. And when he died, that song came to mind. We actually considered playing it at his memorial service, but realized that every single one of the 850 people in attendance would fall out of their pews and roll on the floor sobbing if we played it because they all knew he loved that song. So we started hearing that when he was in school, he would play the song around his dorm, and that it was one of his soundtrack songs. So it wasn't just at home, it was at school. And in particular, some girls, a lot of girls said, oh, yeah, he played that song for me. And so I look into the song and I see that it was recorded by Paul McCartney on my first birthday, June 11th, 1968. Charlie was conceived on my birthday.
Oh,
And the last weekend I saw him alive was my birthday. So that song, it just hits everything. And it's also a very sweet song. It's sad, but it's hopeful. And I think that when you have hit a really difficult life experience, grief, undoing of things that mean a lot, being sad, being changed is appropriate, but we should always try and have a little hope. It shouldn't be irrational or overly optimistic or unrealistic, but you just have to have a little bit of a glimmer to carry you through. And I do hear that in that song.
Yeah, there's studies about that too. It's very valid. Dr. Maria Soros, who I've had on the show, I went to her retreat at Kripalu the year after, and she calls it the swamp and the pond. And you need enough things to get you out of the swamp just a little bit. It
Just a
doesn't have,
little.
she's actually says 3%. It's 3% happier. It's not 10%.
Yeah.
Sorry to the guy that wrote that book. He's great. But 3% is enough. So you just need like a little glimmer to get you out.
Yes.
And it's interesting these days, I've been doing a meditation with people because they really are in the dumps in a lot of ways. And I say, look, let's just spend 5 minutes. And I bet you'll find it hard to spend the 5 minutes, but let's spend 5 minutes imagining everything's going to, all the things that you're worried about will turn out well, that you'll get to the other side. But spend 5 minutes. And it's very helpful for people because we spend the rest of the time of our day, the other how many minutes there are, I think there's 28,000 breaths looking at all the negative. So if we
Yep.
can just find the 5 minutes. So it
Right.
really does work in a very small way, but I really appreciate that. And I love that you named it. So then you were always able to see that and link to that the whole way through your journey here, which is
Yeah. Yeah. As I really turned inward after all this loss, it hurt so bad, and it's understandable. I gave myself grace to feel all the bad things and to let that pain be in me and on me and around me. But you realize I can't spend the next 30 years of my life like this, because that's not a life.
mm.
And I'm not talking about aspirational setting goals, changing the world. It's literally not living. And so I didn't know what that 3% was. I didn't know where that pond was. And I didn't force myself to identify it and work my way to it, but I knew that concept. There has to be a little something.
Mhm.
And I'm still learning that in some ways. I'm reasonably functional. I'm out and about. I'm socializing. I'm working. I'm traveling. I'm around people, but I do get worn out. And I recently, like just this past weekend, got just exhausted, had to slow down. And yesterday, I had a little bit of time between work calls. I said, I'm going to go outside for 15 minutes. I went outside for 15 minutes in my garden, and I didn't do much. I literally moved little things from one spot to another. And I called my daughter and I told her what I was doing. She said, show up, start small.
Oh,
Show up, start small. That's
that's
it.
good.
That's it.
That's good.
So for 15 minutes, I pulled my head up away from obligations and stress and worry, did something else. And now I'm like, I want to get back out there.
Yeah.
So it looks like different things and it feels like different things depending on where we are in our life. Unfortunately, when you are in the mires of deep grief, it is so hard to see that, but it's
Mhm.
there. It's there.
Yeah. And
He is
instinctively you
recognizing it.
found it. Yeah,
Yeah.
instinctively you keep finding it. I think that's probably real. I think that in that, I think we all have the instincts. It's just hard. It's just incredibly hard.
Yeah.
And I think I've taken up most of your time. So I'm going to read two things from the book that I think I'd love to just get your take on. Each first demystifies a select aspect of our new life. Surviving firsts teaches us we're capable of growth. And these accomplishments provide the fuel to tackle the next first. It takes more than abstract knowledge to fully understand a deep and unwanted truth. I know Charlie's gone, but I have to experience his loss in multiple ways, multiple times. We can't default to a lifestyle that shelters us from hard truths. There's no going back on death. You just have to experience it over and over. Just profound.
It is, and it is one of the most infuriating things. You're faced with this loss, and it's about the person and the life that you had and the life you were building with them and who you are. And you have to face it. over and over again. And for me, those firsts, a lot of them have to do with people.
Yeah.
Seeing that friend or that colleague, or being in a situation where someone says, "How many kids do you have?" Or going to a place that he loved for the first time without him. If you don't experience those things, they become bigger and scarier, and they become a problem in addition to the other ongoing pain and stress you feel, right? So
Yeah.
you're actually, by avoiding those first, you're creating problems for yourself. And the thing that I hear people talk about a lot, and like sometimes when I'm talking with a group, I say, "Who here hates going to the grocery store?" Everybody raises their hand. Something about that experience of that, the everyday mundaneness of the thing that you did when the person was here, particularly if you shopped for them or
Mm-hmm.
you cooked for them or if you went there with them. Every aisle is a reminder. And there's the music overhead. And there's the chance that you might run into a neighbor. And there's the fact that you pull into the parking lot and you're parked next to a car right next to his. It's everywhere. And the fact that it's mundane, that it's the grocery store, is insulting. Like, I can't even go to the grocery store.
Yeah.
And yet, the only way to not just completely shut down living is to experience it.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And another thing that can happen to us in grief is what if is a bend backward. What if must be released to move forward. Focus on what is. Charlie is gone. That's it. He's gone. What if is really dangerous.
It is so dangerous. And those are two words that characterize suicide loss. And so, in a way, that forced me to really look at what if. And it's tricky because what do I do with this concept? Because it can pollute your mind, it can pollute your outlook. And yet, you do have to explore it. You do have to go there. Because for me, and I think for a lot of people, there is value in saying, "Okay, I'm going to go all the way. I'm going to go all the way there. What if I had called? What if someone had knocked on the door? What if I had said this or someone else had said that?" And going all the way there, like even to the uncomfortable parts. The key is don't stay there.
Yeah.
You go there, but you don't stay there. And then for me, I had to learn to just accept that what if is a part of my life. So instead of trying to answer that question, I went there, I didn't stay there. Those questions do not have answers. They don't. It's not for me to know and to be comfortable with that. Doesn't mean I like it, but to fight it, to hold on to it,
To
to
live in it.
really ruminate about it doesn't change anything. He's gone. He's not coming back. We will never understand why. We will never know if we could have done something. There's way more that we won't know than we will know. And just that's our reality.
I think you always have these regrets, right? And somebody said to me once that they're in a different place now. They're in a higher plane. They don't worry about these things anymore. They love you. They want you to be happy. They don't want you to be
Yep.
feeling this way. They
Yep.
want you to feel their love and they want you to be happy. That was incredibly helpful for me to just go, oh, okay. That's helpful because I can
Yes.
feel their love, right? I can feel
Right.
that's a real thing. And like you said, you go there, but you don't want to live there, and your loved ones wouldn't want you to live there either.
And I wholeheartedly agree. And that makes sense to me too. Whatever you believe, if you believe in a higher power, a higher plane, another existence, it is not going to be an existence that is bogged down with regret and
Right.
guilt. And it's just not. Maybe, again, I guess that's another thing I choose to believe. But to me, the fact that I find comfort in it is real enough. That's enough for me. And if we're here, we should be here. We should live. And those things, while they may never go away, the what ifs, the regrets, the guilt, my husband and I have reconstructed my entire son's life. We've got 21 years because we are the parents, we're in charge. Everything. We brought him into this world and we were tasked with guiding him and protecting him. There's so many points that we could have done something differently that could have changed the outcome. But to stay in that mode is to not live.
And you're supposed to live.
And you're supposed to live because
And
I'm healthy and I'm here.
I'm a big believer that we're here for a reason.
Yeah.
So that's probably a good place to end. I'm so glad that you wrote this book. It is a fearless, fearless work. Thank you.
Thank you for having me and for helping me continue to have this conversation. I think you and I probably have a similar goal, which is if there's just one person out there who hears one little thing that opens their heart or soothes their heart or makes it a little easier to find that little pond.
Everybody has a different journey through this one, but I think it helps us all, like you said, to see somebody go through it and find their way. So
Yeah,
thank you for showing us the way that you did.
my pleasure.
That's all for today. If you want to learn more about Betsy and her book, please visit blackbirdbetsy.com, and that information will be in the show notes. Thank you so much for listening. I hope this episode was helpful. If it was, please subscribe, drop a review, or share it with your friends and family. That's the best way to get it in the hands of those who may benefit. And if my daughters Sienna and Sylvia are listening, I just want you to know how proud I am of you, and I love you so very much. Bye now.